I want to begin with a warning. I'm going to talk about the most serious challenge we've ever faced as a union, and I am going to get very personal about it, because for me, it is personal. If you don't leave this delegate assembly tomorrow, pondering what I tell you this afternoon, comprehending the seriousness of the fight that we are in, full of energy and commitment for that fight ahead of us, then I will have failed you. But I, for one, am fired up and ready to go. To quote a 2008 campaign theme, I do love a good fight, and we truly have one on our hands now. To begin with, I want to invite you to consider the concept of second chances. History and our own personal lives, certainly my own personal life, are filled with second chances. What matters, as shown in lives as disparate as that of Crazy Horse, Marion Wright Edelman, and Nelson Mandela, is what they did with their second chances. For Crazy Horse, disgrace and a loss of honor did not lead him to abandon his people and fade from history. Instead, he emerged as a stronger, more mature leader who died a martyr's death and remains a mystical, important figure to Native Americans and others. Nelson Mandela did not define his imprisonment on Robben Island as his end. Instead, in a few short years, at the end of his imprisonment, he made the miraculous journey from convict to president of a reborn South Africa. Marion Wright Edelman did not allow the murders of Martin King and Bobby Kennedy to end her work for a more just America. Instead, she helped found the Children's Defense Fund, one of the most respected organizations in the fight for economic equality for the poorest in our nation. What defines each of these cases is that neither the circumstances of the setbacks nor the simple act of survival define the future for Crazy Horse, Mandela, or Marion Wright Edelman. What they did with their second chances did define them as agents of change and examples of courageous risk-taking in the face of incredible challenges. I'm inviting you all, in fact all of UUP, to take heart from these examples, for we are now being given a second chance. The context for this second chance could well be seen for what it truly is, a threat to the very survival of our union. That threat will take on true immediacy starting this Monday, October 5th. On that day, the United States Supreme Court begins its new session and starts to hear cases. Sometime next February or March, it will hear the case of Friedrichs versus California Teachers Association. Now, 2 years ago, I spoke to you about a similar case, Harris v. Quinn. At that time, I warned you all that regardless of how that case was decided by the court, we would be facing more direct threats to our existence in the courts very soon. That day is now arriving. Now, again, I said I was going to speak personally, and I'll start here. I'm made very uncomfortable by the emphasis in this speech on the crisis we face. And even more disturbing is the verbiage that I'm using and going to use about a fight for survival. I did not become UUP president to constantly speak to you about crises. I much prefer to take part in a dialogue about building a progressive movement, a stronger university, and the most effective union in America. But to paraphrase Lincoln, events have certainly controlled me, as they have controlled us. And the events of the past couple decades, both in New York and in our nation, have pointed to this eventuality. As unionists, we are facing the culmination of the efforts by the right wing to destroy us and the progressive movement. And we will have very little impact on what the Supreme Court does next May or June when it issues its decision on Friedrichs. We know that. But I am here today to tell you that we can control the impacts that that decision will have on our union. In fact, we can limit its destructive impacts. We can, through this ultimate test, build that strong, dynamic union we have been talking about for at least the past 2 years. I'm here to tell you today that we will survive, that we will face down the forces of regression and oppression, the powerful elites who would like nothing more than to see us vanish and take with us what remains of the progressive movement in America. And we, I promise you, will not only survive, we will turn this moment into our second chance, our defining moment when our union became the shining example for all unions, fighting with a desperation and determination, filled with the confidence that right makes might, and no Koch brothers or their corporate billions will stop us. Not today, not tomorrow, not any day. For too long in our union's history, we have been content to accept the dues from our members and our fee payers, expecting that nothing would ever change that situation. So we cruised along, almost oblivious to the threat that could come our way. Well, now it's upon us. Now we have a second chance to go out to our membership, to aggressively pursue each and every fee payer, and do all that we can to make them full members in our union and to make every member that we can reach into deeply committed members of our great union. And guess what? We don't have a choice. If we don't do this, we will not survive for long should the Supreme Court rule in favor of the plaintiffs and Friedrichs. And we also have to be strong because, indeed, we are involved in this fight for our survival. Let me give you what you need to know about the Friedrichs versus California Teachers Association case. On the last day of the last session of the Supreme Court in June, 4 justices signed on to the case requiring it to be heard by the entire court in this session. It will most likely be heard in February or March of 2016 with a decision, in all likelihood, delivered by the court at the end of the session in May or June. And what is this case all about? 10 teachers working in public schools in California sued in federal court to overturn the California law which mandates that all members of a bargaining unit pay their fair share of dues. When the state of California, just as the state of New York, gives a union, like us, UUP, the power to collect dues from every member of the bargaining unit, the unions are also given the right and obligation to represent the entirety of the bargaining unit, members and fee payers. The 10 teachers in California are backed by the right-wing Center for Individual Rights, which in turn has received funding from Koch brothers political organizations. Their goal is simple: to eliminate the power of public sector unions from collecting dues from fee payers. That's it. Their case rests on the argument that public sector unions engage in political speech in everything that we do, including negotiations with the state, because everything we do is involved with the state. Therefore, I know it's tough for me to read this, but this is what they argue. Therefore, members are speaking with their dues and are supporting political speech by the unions. Fee payers, they argue, should not be forced to support speech they disagree with through their dues. Once again, and it does get tiresome, doesn't it? The right is equating money with speech. And once again, as in Kentucky, the First Amendment is being perverted into a blunt instrument to undermine progressive actions taken by the government. Those pursuing this case have no interest in the general welfare of American society. What they care about is the destruction of public sector unions, for without us, the union movement would crumble. That would leave the financial environment in our political campaigns totally controlled by the super rich and their corporations. That is what they are after. For with such financial control of elections, they could bring to power those who would sweep away the last vestiges of the New Deal and all progressive successes of the past 100 years. These efforts are joined at the hip with efforts to disenfranchise voters, undermine civil liberties, destroy efforts to protect our natural environment, and crush what is left of workers' rights. It is just plain wrong. We will not stand for it. Are you with me? Good news, our allies in AFT, our national affiliate, are undertaking an aggressive campaign to win this case. From submitting amicus curiae to the court arguing for the constitutionality of fee paying, AFT is also recruiting nationwide for state governments, progressive groups, and even conservative defenders of the First Amendment to do the same. But rest assured, our national leadership is on this aggressively, impressively, and comprehensively. And what about UUP? We will respond. Indeed, we already respond. The first step that your officers took within a week of the court accepting this case was to voluntarily reduce our own officers' stipends. Though this is symbolic, given the small amount of money that is in our budget for stipends, I felt passionately, and we all did, that if we are going to ask other parts of our union organization to make financial sacrifices, as we will have to at some point, we as officers must take the first hit. Second, the officers, the exec board, and our constitutional task force are studying alternative ways to organize ourselves to best serve our members, while also ensuring that we do so with the minimal financial burden. Third, and most importantly, I've called on the officers and staff to put together an aggressive campaign to generate membership and to mobilize our members. The goal of the first, as you will hear from our membership development officer, is to reach a membership percentage of 95% by March 1st, 2016, and 99% by June 1st, 2016. And then let the Supreme Court do whatever the hell it wants to. We started this work, and we all will be a part of it. All elements of UUP structure, from officers to staff, from chapters to committees, have as their number one priority getting members signed up and engaged. Our survival and our future is on the line. Fourth, we have to work to make our members want to fall in love with their union again. I will not preside over this death spiral. I will not witness the end of our union. I did not become president of UUP. I did not become president of UUP to be its last president. As I said before, this is personal for me, and what the right wing is doing and trying to do angers me, enrages me, and drives me to do all that I can to ensure that we not only survive this crisis, but that we emerge stronger. And with that strength, we take the lead in turning the tide against organized money, reclaim our society from these destructive, greedy bastards.